That's why today we have a special show on how to beat the squeeze. One group who might not be feeling the pinch, of course, is members of Parliament. As of today, they're getting more than £2,000 extra a year. And if you're wondering why MSPs and MS in Scotland and Wales aren't howling with rage, it's because they're getting one too. Also, 2 UK judges have resigned from the Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal over the creeping influence of China. We'll talk to Benedict Rogers from Hong Kong Watch. Give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. But first, here's the news.
Thank you, Arlene. It's 3:01. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB Newsroom. Formal criminal and civil investigations have been launched into P&O Ferry surrounding recent redundancies. The government's announced the probe is being carried out by the UK's Insolvency Service. P&O Ferry's boss, Peter Hebblethwaite, admitted breaking the law when he sacked 800 seafarers last month, replacing them with agency workers on cheaper salaries. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says his actions must be scrutinised. The first fines issued by the Met Police investigating parties held in Downing Street during lockdown have been handed out. The fixed penalty notices are reportedly related to one of the earliest events under investigation held in the Cabinet Office on the 18th of June 2020. The £50 fines have been delivered by email and issued to junior civil servants. The Met Police says more fines may be issued as inquiries continue. On average, gas and electricity bills will cost an extra £700 a year. That's as the energy price cap rise comes into effect. The cost of living crisis deepens for many households across Britain from today, and it comes ahead of the increase to national insurance later this month. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the government needs to do much more.
The government response has been utterly pathetic. No real response to that, no comfort to people who are so worried. What we, the Labour Party, have said is, look, the oil and gas companies in the North Sea have made excess profits over and above what they expected because of the high level of pricing across the world. That windfall tax should be used to take up to £600 off people's bills. And that is a practical solution to a very, very real problem.
Specialist police officers have started to remove environmental activists blocking oil terminals across England. The group Just Stop Oil says around 10 sites have been obstructed by hundreds of protesters. It's calling on the government to stop funding new oil licences. Among those taken away by officers were 2 people who'd climbed on top of a tanker at an Esso depot in Birmingham. At least 13 arrests have been made so far. Several facilities have been forced to suspend operations as a result of the blockades. One protester spoke to GB News reporter Amelia Harper earlier. She says urgent action is needed.
We need to just stop oil, and if that's wind turbines, then I think that's a much, much smaller price to pay than the end of civilization as we know it, and I'm not exaggerating. We need to stop oil now, or our children will have no future.
And to Ukraine, the mayor of Kyiv says there's a huge battle going on to the north and east of the city. Vitaly Klitschko's also warning those wishing to return to the capital to wait. It comes as the UK's Ministry of Defence claims Ukraine has retaken some of the villages captured by Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russian forces have been forced to change their tactics.
To the north of Kyiv, in the direction of Chernihiv, in the Sumy region, the occupiers are being pushed back. They are aware that they can no longer stand the intensity of hostilities they could have held in the first half of March. But we must also understand that for the Russian military, this is part of their tactics. All this is not that easy. We know their plans. We know that they are moving away from the areas where we are beating them to focus on others that are very important, on those where it can be difficult for us.
The Red Cross is sending teams to the southern port city of Mariupol and says it's hopeful the evacuation of thousands of civilians can begin. Moscow's agreed to open a humanitarian corridor, but Ukrainian officials say it's still very dangerous for anyone attempting to enter or leave. Earlier, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said some progress had been made at peace talks. President Zelensky's office confirmed further negotiations are continuing today. Refugees fleeing Mariupol have been describing the devastation they've witnessed.
I was in Mariupol the whole time. We just slowly watched how the number of our homes was getting smaller every day. Everyone I know, they don't have a house right now. I also don't have a house, and all the belongings that I have with me, that's all I took out.
We waited for the negotiations so much, for 2 or 3 days. But when we realised on March 22nd that we had food left for 2 days, and we were drinking water only by 2 gulps, we decided to leave. But we were leaving under shelling. It was scary.
This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to the briefing with Arlene Foster.
And welcome back to the briefing. First of all, as we heard on the news, there are reports this afternoon that some of the people working in government who were involved in the lockdown-breaking parties in Whitehall have been issued with their first fines by the Metropolitan Police. We'll cross live now to Paul Hawkins, who is at Westminster. Paul, what have you been hearing about this?
Yeah, hi Arlene. Yeah, just to give you some more detail on what is being reported. This is in connection with an event at the Cabinet's office on the 18th of June 2020. We know that 20 fines so far have been issued by the police. So those fines have now been sent by email to those individuals. Doesn't mean necessarily that 20 people have received fines, because of course some of those people could have received multiple fines, but this is in relation to a leaving do for a number 10 official in the Cabinet office. So it is a significant development, but no word yet from the Met Police on confirming what is being reported. It is also being reported that the Metropolitan Police didn't fully consult the CPS at the start of the investigation. They're having to talk to the CPS now, because if any of those individuals were to challenge those fines, then they would have to go to court, and so that is why there is why it's being reported that the Met Police are consulting with the CPS. But that's what's being reported at the moment. We've yet to hear from the Met to confirm those reports, and of course the police continue to investigate. 100 individuals had to fill in questionnaires, including Boris Johnson. Downing Street refusing to say whether those fines indicate criminality or not, although 2 cabinet ministers have said it does. And remember, number 10 have said that should Boris Johnson receive one of those fines, then they would go public with that.
OK, Paul, thank you very much for that update. It looks a little blustery around Westminster today, but we're talking today about beating the squeeze, and people around the country are tightening their purse strings even more from today as the cost of living crisis deepens for many households. It is a triple whammy. Energy bills will skyrocket, a raft of tax rises come into force, and the government's proposed national insurance tax rise will come into force next Wednesday. GB News has a special day of coverage on what all this means for the pounds in your pocket, and this is Beat the Squeeze.
We're heading for the biggest fall in living standards since the 1950s, and Rishi Sunak's spring statement measures will do little to offset that drop. This cost of living squeeze has been months in the making. As we emerge from lockdown, global supply chains remained broken. Demand has surged, but our economy struggled to get into gear, causing prices to rise. Even before Vladimir Putin chose to invade Ukraine, UK inflation was at a 30-year high. Now this conflict's stopping Russian and Ukrainian crops and energy exports reaching global markets, again causing prices to spiral. From today, April the 1st, household utility bills go up by 54% on average to almost £2,000 a year, with bills set to rise even further in the autumn. Also from today, council tax bills rise by 3% on average, although those in bands A to D are in line for a £150 rebate. From next week, national insurance contributions increase by 1.25 percentage points for employers and employees. That will cost basic rate taxpayers an extra £178 a year on average, while those on higher rate tax will pay, again on average, £715 more. As these higher bills and tax rises take hold, wheat, barley and fertiliser prices are also soaring, pushing up food and drink prices in the shops, restaurants and pubs. Petrol and diesel costs are also on the up, of course. It's now almost £100 to fill up a family car. And Sunak's spring statement fuel duty cut has been only partly passed on by retailers, with pump prices still rising. GB News has been highlighting inflation and the rising cost of living for months. But today's a day when the cost of living squeeze got significantly tighter.
So joining me now is Conservative MP Sir John Redwood, who has been a big critic of the national insurance tax heist. John, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, we heard there from Liam about the heavy burden that's going to go on citizens from today, and it'll get worse next week with this national insurance rise. The Chancellor is saying he can't do everything. Is there more he could do, though?
Yes, of course, and he should do. He's not doing nearly enough. We don't need tax rises at exactly the same time that the oil and gas price rises are taking so much money out of people's family budgets. That's quite enough squeeze without national insurance going up, without the freezing of income tax allowances. I would have been urging him to take VAT off domestic fuel, at least for the next year or so, to give us a bit more of a break. I was very pleased that he did decide to take VAT off fuel economy measures, which the EU made us put on, but I think it's quite wrong that they're not also extending that to Northern Ireland, and I wish them to make sure it applies to the whole United Kingdom. And I'm critical of the Bank of England because I think they went on printing too much money for too long last year, which helped fuel the inflation. But now, as Liam's been saying, the main drivers of this inflation are global shortages brought on by the Ukraine war, brought on by the difficult position in oil and gas markets that predated the Ukraine war.
Yes, and you're right to point out, of course, that those VAT issues do not apply to Northern Ireland because of the protocol, and that's something that still continues and is still being fought on, and I know that it's something that you've been very vocal around. But, of course, some of these events are out with the Chancellor and the government's remit, and we know that the war in Ukraine was not something that was foreseen. But I was speaking to a poverty campaigner earlier on, and he said that, look, in October, we knew that the prices were going up and more should have been done in preparation for what was coming towards us. And surely now, when we're going into the summer months, hopefully demand will not be as great in those summer months. What is it that can be done between now and the winter months that could make a difference coming into those dreaded winter months, John?
Well, I think we need the second helpings from the statement he gave us last week. I think the Chancellor didn't do enough. I think there's some signs that other ministers and the Prime Minister think he didn't do enough. So I would say to him, there's no shame in coming back and saying, you know what, I think I could do a little bit more. See, the great advantage he's got is that we've just had a great year of much faster growth than the Treasury expected, and the revenues have actually poured in. He borrowed £105 billion less in the year to March 22 than the Treasury said they were going to be borrowing a year ago. So why don't we celebrate that and say, well, then there's a bit more scope to give something back to people at a time when they're going to be sandbagged, because the huge increase in gas and electricity prices has exactly the same impact on people's budgets as the national insurance tax rise has. Indeed, it has a much bigger impact because it's a much bigger sum of money. And both those things slow the economy down. And the danger is that they'll now slow the economy down too much. And so we'll end up borrowing more and having a lower income, and everybody will be more miserable.
Well, as you and I both know, John, the Treasury always want to keep money and don't want to spend more money than they can help. But I think we all know that this is a crisis now that we are in. When you look at the number of impacts that are happening on ordinary families around the country, surely the Chancellor must do more, and hopefully he will in the coming weeks. But I wanted to turn to something else with you, because I know you have been watching what's going on in the energy market, and you've been quite vociferous around shale gas and around using our own resources. I noticed this week that the licence for the Cambo oil field up off the coast of Scotland has been allowed to continue for another year. I presume that's something you would welcome, John, to give the space to look at that Cambo oil field again.
Well, I think the government has now shifted its position in a welcome way on the supply of oil and gas. It is mad to leave the oil and gas that we have available at home under the ground and import oil and gas from other countries. We burn more CO2 doing that, we spend a lot more money doing that, and we don't capture the tax revenues that we would capture if we produced our own. So I'm very pleased the government has now accepted what I and some others have been saying, and they're now saying that they want to get some more oil and gas out of the North Sea. I think we also need to look at onshore gas. I think I would start with the promise or pledge that no landowner or council area would have to exploit onshore gas if they didn't want to. But I think there are parts of the country who would welcome the opportunity to get all those well-paid jobs, and I think there should be a share of the royalty, there should be a participation in the profits or free gas for the people in the local area, that there should be incentives. And then we would probably get some onshore gas out as well. Indeed, the Bowland Shale in Lancashire, they extend under the sea, so you could even look at extracting the gas from undersea. It'd be a bit dearer, but that might be preferred by some people. So we must do everything we can to tackle this supply crisis in oil and gas. We don't want to use Russian oil and gas, nor does the continent, that depend very heavily on it. Surely it is our duty to help take that Russian gas out of the system. And in the process, the Treasury will get a lot more money. They're already going to get a bonanza of extra tax on the oil and gas we do take out of the North Sea. So if we took a bit more out, they would get even more tax, which would mean they'd be in an even stronger position to ease the squeeze on all those families that are finding the bills too high.
Yes, and I found it ironic, and I presume you do as well, that on the very day that families are having to deal with these added pressures, that the Just Stop Oil protesters have decided to go out and actually probably add more costs to the production and the movement of oil around the country because of their actions. I mean, I'm going to ask you for a comment, obviously, on those protests today.
Yes, indeed. I'm not really able to hear anything you say, but let me comment on what I think you're saying, because the link is so weak. I think there is a lot of opportunity. The government is rightly in favour of a levelling up strategy. Levelling up requires a lot more cheap energy to reindustrialise and make more things at home. And it can be greener because, as I say, the government figures themselves now admit that if you import liquid gas, for example, you produce more than twice as much CO2 in the process than if you have your own gas down a pipe from your own fields. And you get all that advantage of the extra jobs and the extra activity. But what we need now is growth. We just had a great year of growth. They're taking too much money out of the economy. The oil and gas prices are taking too much money out of the economy. So we need to put something back so there is more growth, and then there will be more tax revenue.
Sir John, thank you for joining me. I'm really sorry about the audio quality in relation to my questions, and I do want to thank you for sticking with it and staying with us. Still to come, we'll go around the country to see how this Bleak Friday, as some have named it, is affecting people, with some pensioners having to choose between heating and eating. This and a lot more to come. Before that, let's take a look at the weather.
Hello again. A bit of a chill out there this afternoon, and it's not going to get much warmer over the weekend. It's going to be cold and frosty tonight, an ice risk, and still some sleet and snow showers in a few spots. High pressure, though, is in control of our weather, and it will bring most of us a fine weekend. But there's this weather front driving south, and notice the isobars are still quite close together, making for quite a strong wind and an icy wind this evening across Kent. But the showers here are fading. Some showers keeping going over parts of eastern England, which is why it could turn icy here. And we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. And then wet weather heading south across Northern Ireland. Mostly rain here, but as it comes across Wales, we will see some snow here, mostly over hills, but some down to lower levels, particularly through the early hours. It is going to be a cold night with a fairly extensive frost even in towns and cities, and some rural spots maybe down to -5 or -6. Watch out for the ice in the morning as well. Still some wintry showers coming in across eastern England. Showers across South Wales, southwest England in the morning, mostly of rain, but again, some sleet, snow and hail is possible. And we'll keep 1 or 2 scattered showers across England and Wales through the day, but some good spells of sunshine. Most of Scotland and Northern Ireland having a dry, fine Saturday with some sunshine, but it ain't warm. Temperatures in single figures for the most part, but those strong, bitter winds will be much lighter during Saturday. Light winds and clear skies, though, means tumbling temperatures once more. So if you're out on Saturday night, be prepared for that. It will be a cold and frosty start to Sunday. Again, where we keep 1 or 2 showers going, it could also be a little icy on Sunday morning. Generally, though, another fine day for the vast majority. Maybe 1 or 2 showers around the coast in the west and the east coast. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland during Sunday afternoon with some rain trickling in here and into northwestern parts of Scotland. But for many, Sunday is also dry and bright. Still on the cold side, however, with highs of just 9 or 10 Celsius. Goodbye.
Hello, I'm Esther Agvey.
And I'm Philip Davis. We bring you the Saturday selection.
So whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend.
Do join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Welcome back. With bills soaring for people around the country, we're doing a day of special coverage on how families are trying to make ends meet. This is Beat the Squeeze. So the cost of living crisis is biting. Pensioners across the UK in particular are feeling the struggle as they try to heat their homes as energy bills skyrocket. Thousands of elderly people up and down the country are being forced to choose between heating and putting food on the table, leading many to fear the consequences to their well-being, just as a bout of cold weather sweeps right across the UK. Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley has been in Hull investigating the real-life impact of the cost of living crisis on our country's pensioners, and she brings us this report.
75-year-old pensioner George Ford already owes more than £1,400 to his energy company and fears that the April price hike will bring him to an early grave. The Army veteran's already making the tough decision of whether to heat his home or eat a meal, and says he's lost 2 stone within a month because he can't afford to put food on the table.
Now I sit here till about 10 o'clock with no light on, and I make a flask of coffee or tea to last me all the time, so that I'm not using so much. But my bills never seem to go down. Can't afford it, and I know that with the things I suffer, COPD, heart trouble, I've got no feelings in my hands or my legs. I don't think I'm going to be alive for Christmas because I won't be able to keep myself warm. And I feel sorry for a lot of pensioners that's out here. It's going to hit them very much, and I will be honest, it's going to hit the food banks more.
To keep warm, George wraps up in a coat, hat, gloves and scarf. Even though he volunteers at a food bank, George is very reluctant to receive help from there.
I won't take anything from the food bank because there's family that need it, children that need it more than I do. I'll be honest, I just feel like dying.
George volunteers at the Beanie Street Food Bank, which helps up to 350 people a week. Founder of the organisation, Robbie Keane, says they've recently seen a dramatic increase in the number of pensioners and working people using its services, as well as first-time food bank users.
We are seeing an awful increase in pensioners and pensioners, very worried, as opposed to people on universal credits and stuff. It's pensioners, I suppose it's universal pension, I think they would be on, but they're very, very worried and scared, especially the cost of electric. Cost of food even going up itself in supermarkets and stuff. It's quite scary. And we support an awful lot of people within work poverty, and that seems to be creeping up as well big time over the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks. We have seen a number of increases in people coming that have never used the food bank before. I would suggest that it's definitely up by 30 to 50% up in around that bracket.
Today's energy price increase is only the start of gas and electric bills increasing. With prices expected to go up again in 6 months' time, community support from food banks like this is more important than ever. Anna Riley, GB News, Hull.
So next on the briefing, we will be speaking to Benedict Rogers on the judges who have quit the Hong Kong court over the creeping influence of China. We'll also have the latest on the war in Ukraine, where there's mounting evidence of some victories over the Russian invaders. Plus, on our special Beat the Squeeze Day, MPs are getting today a pay rise. Probably not the right time for it. But first of all, here's your news headlines.
Thank you, Arlene. It's 3:28. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Formal criminal and civil investigations have been launched into P&O ferries surrounding recent redundancies. The government's announced the probes being carried out by the UK's insolvency service. P&O ferries boss Peter Hebblethwaite admitted breaking the law when he sacked 800 seafarers last month, replacing them with agency workers on cheaper salaries. The first fines issued by the Met Police investigating parties held in Downing Street during lockdown have been handed out. The fixed penalty notices relate to one of the earliest events under investigation held in the Cabinet Office on the 18th of June 2020. The £50 fines have reportedly been sent by email to junior civil servants. The cost of living crisis deepens for many households in Britain from today as the energy price cap rise comes into effect. On average, gas and electricity bills will cost an extra £700 a year. It comes ahead of the increase to national insurance as well as other bills. At least 13 people have now been arrested as the group Just Stop Oil continues to hold protests across England. Specialist police officers were called to remove environmental activists blocking oil terminals. The group says around 10 sites have been obstructed by hundreds of protesters. They're calling on the government to stop funding new oil licences. The mayor of Kyiv says there's a huge battle going on to the north and east of the city. Vitaly Klitschko is also warning those wishing to return to the capital to wait. It comes as the UK's Ministry of Defence claims Ukraine's retaken some of the villages captured by Russia. But it says Kyiv and Chernihiv have been subjected to continued missile strikes despite Russian claims of reduced activity. The Red Cross is sending teams to the southern port city of Mariupol and says it's hopeful the evacuation of thousands of civilians can begin. Moscow's agreed to open a humanitarian corridor, but Ukrainian officials say it's still very dangerous for anyone attempting to enter or leave. Earlier, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said some progress had been made at peace talks. President Zelensky's office confirmed further negotiations are continuing today. And free COVID testing in England has come to an end today. That's as another record number of people in the UK have had COVID. At the end of last week, an estimated 4.9 million people had it, up from 4.3 million the week before, according to the Office for National Statistics. Those considered to be a high risk and some NHS and social care staff will still be eligible for free tests. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Is back to the briefing with Arlene in just a moment.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Welcome back to the briefing with me, Arlene Foster. It's just gone 3:34. Now, many of you have been getting in touch and we love to hear from you. Terry in Derbyshire says, politicians around the globe have been pushing green and carbon neutral policies and over the past few years have overseen the decommissioning of virtually all of the carbon-fuelled energy. Implementation of these plans has revolved around destroying the traditional sources of energy, before having clear plans for replacement of energy sources. Good plans, but ill thought out and poorly managed. Paul says the increasing costs can be stopped by legislating against the unfair profits of those profiteering while stating record profits. 49% tax in total from the energy companies is a powerful incentive against stopping the rip-off. The green tax is the same. And then finally, Gwen says it's not only the increased prices now, but rents are already ridiculously high. I really don't know how people can afford to live. So keep getting in touch with us because we want to hear from you on this, our Beat the Squeeze Day. Obviously, people are engaging with the whole issue and sending us in their views. But now I'm going to go to the other side of the world, and 2 top UK judges have resigned from the Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal over the creeping influence of China in the region. Lord Robert Reid said in a statement, "The courts in Hong Kong continue to be internationally respected for their commitment to the rule of law. Nevertheless, I have concluded in agreement with the government that the judges of the Supreme Court cannot continue to sit in Hong Kong without appearing to endorse an administration which has departed from the values of political freedom and freedom of expression to which the justices of the Supreme Court are deeply committed." This comes after a new so-called national security law was introduced in China in 2020, and that cut freedom of expression and made it easier to punish protesters in Hong Kong. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said she supported the decision made by those 2 judges from the Supreme Court. Well, I'm glad to say now that joining me is Benedict Rogers. He's the Chief Executive of Hong Kong Watch. Welcome, Benedict. Were you surprised that these 2 Supreme Court judges have decided to remove themselves from the Hong Kong Court of Appeal?
Well, thank you. I wasn't surprised, and in fact, I think they should have done so quite a while ago, but I very much welcome it. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, and the Foreign Secretary and the Justice Secretary's support for it is very welcome. There are, of course, some other retired judges who've, as I understand it, said they're going to stay on, and there are also Australian and Canadian judges that appear to be staying on, and I hope they will reconsider their position in light of the 2 Supreme Court judges.
Yeah, I was reading a little today about that, Benedict, and they're basically saying that they feel because they're not serving judges, they're retired judges, that they should stay on and try to deal with the issues there. You think that's sending out perhaps a mixed message?
I think it is sending a mixed message. I think it would have been much better if all the foreign judges had left together, and that would have sent a very strong, united message. But of course, for the retired judges, it is their decision. The government can't force them to withdraw. But I do hope they would reconsider.
I suppose what they're trying to say is if we stay, we can then construe this legislation in a way which will limit the power of China and try to mitigate the worst excesses of the legislation that is in place. Do you understand their rationale for staying on?
I think I can understand that to a certain extent, but and that was why we didn't call for the withdrawal of the judges when the national security law was first imposed, because we wanted to see whether they could have exactly that kind of mitigating effect. But it's clear over the last year that the hugely draconian law has been used, and not just the national security law, but some other laws as well, have been used to pursue political opponents, dissidents, pro-democracy activists, in a relentless way, and things like bail, for example, which used to be a absolutely normal part of Hong Kong's legal system, has been denied to pretty much all the national security law prisoners, and so many political prisoners have been in jail now for a long time and haven't even had their trial. They've been in prison pre-trial. So all these reasons, I think it's clear now that the presence of foreign judges is giving credibility to a system that has rapidly lost credibility.
So, Benedict, just for our viewers and listeners, you're someone who has lived in Hong Kong. You know Hong Kong very well. You worked there. Just describe the changes that have been made, not only because of this national security law, which has been talked about quite a bit, which came in to force in 2020, but even before then. What has changed in Hong Kong? I've been to Hong Kong. When I was in Hong Kong, it was a thriving economy. It was doing really well. Have things changed over a short period of time?
They've changed very rapidly and very dramatically. As you say, Hong Kong used to be not just a thriving economy, but actually one of the most open, freest cities in Asia. And it was handed over to China in 1997 with the promise that its way of life, its basic freedoms, the rule of law would be protected at least for the first 50 years from the handover, so at least until 2047. And that's under an international treaty, the Sino-British Joint Declaration. In the last few years, I guess it was starting probably 10 years or so ago, but it's accelerated in the last 3 or 4 years. Pretty much all of Hong Kong's freedoms now have been dismantled. Press freedom, independent media has been shut down, the right to protest has been denied, academic freedom is threatened. All the basic freedoms now are being torn up. And not only actually in Hong Kong. I myself, first of all, was denied entry to Hong Kong in 2017 and was probably the first foreigner to experience that. But then more recently, I personally and the organization I've co-founded, Hong Kong Watch, have been formally threatened by the Hong Kong police under the national security law using their extraterritoriality powers. So they demanded that we take down our website, which is it's a UK-based organization. I'm a British citizen. So the reach of the clampdown in Hong Kong extends even beyond its borders.
And I was really shocked to see as well that people were sending your mother misleading information just to try and make you feel uncomfortable. I mean, I couldn't believe that sort of thing was going on, but I find that incredible. I mean, this is a country that was a centre, as you say, for industry and for the economy. And now you're saying that, and absolutely the case, that people are not even being given bail when they've been charged with offences and very basic rights that one would expect elsewhere. I mean, clearly, have we forgotten about Hong Kong? What more should we be doing about this issue? And particularly when we look at what's happening in other parts of the world, what is it that we should be doing to try and raise these issues?
Well, I would say that the government has certainly improved its response to the Hong Kong situation in the last couple of years. I give the government a lot of credit for the very generous and courageous BNO, British National Overseas Scheme, that provides a lifeline to hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers who either need to get out or want to get out because they see no future. And the government has also stepped up its language. Liz Truss has made a number of very robust statements. But I think the one thing that the government has not yet done that it should is to impose sanctions, targeted sanctions on officials in the Beijing regime and the Hong Kong government responsible for tearing up an international treaty and tearing up Hong Kong's freedoms. Because I think if there are no consequences for China's actions, if they're allowed to get away with what they've done with impunity, they'll just be emboldened to be even more repressive at home and even more aggressive beyond the borders of China. So sanctions, I think, is the one act that the British government hasn't yet taken that it should.
And just finally, Benedict, obviously we've been watching very closely what's been happening in Ukraine in terms of the Russian invasion and what have you. I mean, from your expertise, having lived in Hong Kong, what should we read into the fact that China hasn't been saying very much in relation to all of that?
Well, I think possibly China may have been caught by surprise by the speed and strength of the Western response to the Russian invasion. I think Xi Jinping, like Vladimir Putin, may have calculated that we would be weaker, slower, less united. And I think the ability of Western countries to come together, the about turn from Germany, for example, the effectiveness of the sanctions we've imposed on Russia, as well as the fact that Putin's plan in Ukraine is not going according to plan. I think all of those things will have made leaders in Beijing just pause for thought. I don't think we should take it as a sign that they've changed their backing for Putin or their hostility to the West, but I think it will have made them think and recalculate.
Benedict, thank you. Fascinating as always to talk to you, and it's really good to hear your thoughts on what's going on at present. Now, Russia, of course, has accused Ukraine of striking an oil depot in the Russian city of Belgorod. The Kremlin says that the attack will hinder peace talks aimed at ending fighting after Russia's invasion of its smaller neighbour. The airstrike, which involved 2 Ukrainian attack helicopters firing missiles into Russian airspace, marks a significant development of the war since it broke out in February. Back in Ukraine, the regional governors of Kyiv and Chernihiv regions have said that Russia has started to pull back some of its forces. However, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has said that Russian forces are not withdrawing, but simply regrouping. Well, joining me now to discuss this is former British Army officer and chemical weapons expert Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. Hamish, thank you for joining me. Were you surprised to see the reports of this Ukrainian strike on this Russian oil depot just north, we think, of Kharkiv?
Arlene, hi, good afternoon. Yes, I was, but I think it really sort of points us in the direction of where this conflict, where this war is at the moment. If two Ukrainian helicopters can get into a position, even potentially in Russian territory, some people are saying, and take out a strategic asset, the Russian army, the oil and fuel depot, and we know what problems the Russians have had with logistics, keeping their tanks fueled, is incredible. One would expect the Russians to have air superiority, to have ground-to-air missiles to take these things out. So it's a real statement, and once again, it's illustrating how poorly the Russian military are performing. And hopefully we are at a tipping point. And as you said, the repositioning, as the Russians are saying, or the withdrawal from key areas does give one some hope that perhaps those cities, particularly Kyiv, which we thought were going to be an absolute bloodbath, maybe Putin is trying to gain something at least out of his ill-gotten and ill-advised invasion into Ukraine, and hopefully it gives a little ray of hope that we might see better times ahead. But we can never trust Putin in this particular game, because this might just be a ruse. He might be repositioning to re-attack.
Well, I think that's what the NATO Secretary-General was suggesting, that it was a case of coming back to regroup and that things were certainly not changing. I'm sure you've seen the commentary from Australia from the head of GCHQ, Sir Jeremy Fleming, when he said that Putin had massively misjudged the Ukrainian invasion, and indeed that there was some evidence that Russian soldiers were not taking orders and not obeying orders. What are we to make of all of that, Hamish?
Well, hopefully, from the perspective of the Ukrainians and those who want to see peace, hopefully that is a positive thing. I mean, it is extraordinary that such an overestimation of the Russian capability has been made, and such an underestimation of the resolve of the Ukrainian people and military to resist, and also for the international community to support them. I suppose it is rather ironic that a dictator like Putin, he thinks he can call all the shots and do exactly what he wants, but actually it does appear that there are some people with morals and scruples within that regime, and ordinary rank and file men and women of the Russian army are realizing, that they are being involved in war crimes. They're invading a country for no real good reason at all, and are voting with their feet, and that is to be, applauded. The fact that he is sacking some of his generals, and there are murmurings angst and missupport for him again is positive. I mean, it does. We've seen what Putin is capable of, not just in Ukraine but elsewhere. I'm talking to you from Salisbury, where he ordered a chemical weapons attack. So I think we have to be incredibly careful and tread very carefully. But hopefully, this might well be the beginning of the end. We shall see.
And just to finish off, Hamish, do you think this attack on Belgorod is going to have an impact on the peace talks, which we understand are still continuing?
Well, I am amazed by the pomposity of the Russian response to the attack. How possibly could the Ukrainians, attack something on Russian soil after we've seen them attack nuclear power stations up and down the country, which could have caused damage across Europe. So we shall see. I think I would hope that certainly the Ukrainians are in a much better position now to negotiate peace. And let's hope that Putin cuts his losses and gets his troops out of the country as quickly as possible so that we can help this brave nation rebuild itself.
Hamish, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you again. Now we're going to head back from the Ukraine to the UK and our special coverage of the cost of living crisis. This is Beat the Squeeze. So the controversial decision, which was made some time ago, to increase salaries for members of Parliament comes into force today. Last month, the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority announced that MPs would receive an increase to their pay packet of 2.7%. That equates to just over £2,200. Now, the decision has been criticised across party lines, with Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer saying that the rise shouldn't go ahead, whilst families up and down the nation are feeling the burden of soaring increases in the cost of living. And the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has urged the authorities to show restraint. Well, it's not just politicians in Westminster getting their pay increased, but in Wales too. And joining me live from Cardiff Bay with more details is our Welsh reporter, Lily Hewitson.
Yes, good afternoon, Arlene. Whilst, as you say there, whilst people across the country are being forced to scrutinise their finances as energy bills go up today, politicians here in Wales and, as you say, across the UK are being handed some extra cash due to inflation. Now, here in Cardiff Bay, the Independent Remuneration Board for the Senedd has agreed for the allowances of members and their support staff to increase by 3%, and that's for 2022 and 2023. Now, the board's report says that it has acknowledged the exceptional times that we're currently in. Now, members of the Senate's pay will also be increasing by 0.4% from today, which will be the first increase that they've seen since April 2020, when it was last frozen. Now, the board consulted members, their staff, and an outside surveying company, which analysed the recent rise in office rents before making a final decision on pay and allowances.
And I suppose, Lily, the argument will be made this isn't people in Parliament or in the Senate awarding themselves pay rises. This is an independent body that has decided on pay rises.
Yes, that's right, Arlene. It's a completely independent body that has made this decision. As you say, when it comes to the pay of MPs, this is something that Sir Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson has said shouldn't have gone ahead this year, considering the situation that we're finding ourselves in with the increase in inflation that people are having to, people in everyday households are having to really knuckle down and look at their finances when people in power are getting this extra bit of cash in their pockets.
And Lily, I suppose this will happen automatically. The pay rises will happen automatically. But if members of Parliament, members of Senate, MSPs in Scotland don't want to take the pay rise, I'm presuming that they can hand that money back?
I'm not exactly sure on the details of that, Arlene. I assume that once that money comes into their possession, they can do as they will with it. There may well be some MPs or MSs who may well want to donate that to charity, as I think people will certainly be looking at them, knowing that they'll be having this extra money in their pockets and questioning what exactly they'll be doing with it.
Well, Lily, thank you so much for joining us from Cardiff Bay. Today it's always good to see you in Wales. And indeed, this is a story that has affected the whole of the UK, as I say, in Scotland, in Wales, in Westminster. And I know in Northern Ireland they have an independent body that sets the wages of the MLAs there as well. But of course, at the moment, Stormont has been in recess because they're about to go into an election campaign. So that's not happening over there at this present moment in time. So this has been about today, and this is going to continue throughout the day, our Beat the Squeeze agenda today, because of course people are really feeling the pinch at present in relation to tax rises, energy costs, the price of their phone bills are going to go up. Things are really beginning to bite. And so over the rest of the day, we'll be covering Beat the Squeeze, and no doubt we'll be covering it for quite a while on GB News. But you've been watching The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster. The show is back every Friday from 3 p.m. And up next, it's Nana, who will continue to beat the squeeze.
Hello again. Bit of a chill out there this afternoon, and it's not going to get much warmer over the weekend. It's going to be cold and frosty tonight, an ice risk, and still some sleet and snow showers in a few spots. High pressure, though, is in control of our weather, and it will bring most of us a fine weekend. But there's this weather front driving south, and notice the isobars are still quite close together, making for quite a strong wind and an icy wind this evening across Kent. But the showers here are fading. Some showers keeping going over parts of eastern England, which is why it could turn icy here. And we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. And then wet weather heading south across Northern Ireland. Mostly rain here, but as it comes across Wales, we will see some snow here, mostly over hills, but some down to lower levels, particularly through the early hours. It is going to be a cold night with a fairly extensive frost even in towns and cities, and some rural spots maybe down to -5 or -6. Watch out for the ice in the morning as well. Still some wintry showers coming in across eastern England. Showers across South Wales, southwest England in the morning, mostly of rain, but again, some sleet, snow and hail is possible. And we'll keep 1 or 2 scattered showers across England and Wales through the day, but some good spells of sunshine. Most of Scotland and Northern Ireland having a dry, fine Saturday with some sunshine, but it ain't warm. Temperatures in single figures for the most part. But those strong, bitter winds will be much lighter during Saturday. Light winds and clear skies, though, means tumbling temperatures once more. So if you're out on Saturday night, be prepared for that. It will be a cold and frosty start to Sunday. Again, where we keep 1 or 2 showers going, it could also be a little icy on Sunday morning. Generally, though, another fine day for the vast majority. Maybe 1 or 2 showers around the coast in the west and the east coast. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland during Sunday afternoon with some rain trickling in here and into northwestern parts of Scotland. But for many, Sunday is also dry and bright. Still on the cold side, however, with highs of just 9 or 10 Celsius. Goodbye.
Join us every Sunday at 10 a.m. for The Political Correction.
We're here to put you, the people, back in charge. Our debate is about all areas of the United Kingdom.
It's about what's really going on in our country.
It's about you. So please get in touch and tell us what you think.
Don't miss it. It's The Political Correction every Sunday at 10 a.m. on GB News.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.